And welcome again to North Central Journal. I'm Scott May. And we thought this month would be a good time for us to delve into the world of financial planning. A deep dive with Mike Davis. Mike is with Bright Future Financial, LLC. We've had an association. As a matter of fact, Mike at one time was doing a show here at FATV. And now you're located over in Leominster.
I am.
And you've graced us with your presence, which is...
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, we have had a relationship with regard to financial planning for several years. And I thought, you know, there's a lot of things that people either don't know about financial planning or are not even thinking about. Yes. And that's what we want to do. We want to give people some direction, some suggestions, and some advice. And when I say we, I mean you, of course.
For sure.
And we'll begin with that question. Why is financial planning important? What is important about it?
Well, Scott, financial planning is important. I mean, it's really, really simple. Nobody's going to do it for you. You know, so if you want to plan your retirement, you got to do it yourself. Otherwise, it's just not going to get done, and you're not going to be able to achieve everything you want to achieve and live the lifestyle you want to live.
And when we say financial planning, of course, retirement planning is a big part of that subject.
It is.
And that brings up the next question, and that is, when do you recommend people really start looking at planning for retirement?
Yeah, well, Scott, that's a great question, but it's never too early to start planning for retirement. The earlier you get started, the younger you get started, the better, the more you can save over time. There's no better friend to compound interest than time. So the faster you get started, the better. You know, at the end of the day, you will thank, your future self will thank you.
So what is that good first step? If I want to start planning my retirement, what's the first thing I should do?
So there's several things you should do, you know, from the get-go, but the first thing you got to do is first get an idea of what you want your retirement to look like. Mm-hmm. You know, think about what are all those things you've always dreamed about. Is it playing golf 4 times a week? Is it traveling to every major league baseball park in the United States? Is it taking a cruise and visiting every continent in the world?
The bucket list kind of thing.
The bucket list stuff,
yeah.
Exactly correct. Yeah. You know, climbing Mount Everest. I remember the movie Bucket List. It was a great movie. But basically, you know, identify those things that you want to do. Think about what you want the lifestyle to look like. Okay, that's the first thing. We can't make a plan if we don't know what we're planning for. Mm-hmm. And then once we know what we're planning for, I think the best first step is to then think about how much we want to consider saving systematically, you know, to be able to get us to our goals. You know, that's so important. Systematic savings to any type of future plan, like retirement specifically, is critical. I can't say that enough. A good rule of thumb, you know, a lot of people ask me how much do I need to save for retirement? Everybody's different, but if you're starting young enough, a good rule of thumb is save 10% of your income. You know, a lot of people have, you know, heard that around, I'm sure. But for a lot of us, it may seem a little unrealistic. It may seem really hard,
sure,
you know, to save 10% of your income. And it's funny, we always figure out a way to pay our bills. Right? We always figure out a way to pay the electric bill, the water bill. We got to keep that running and on. We always figure out a way we keep our mortgage and our car loans up to date. But we never have enough at the end of the month to save. Okay? So what I always encourage people I work with to do is treat savings like a bill. Create that bill for yourself so that it becomes something that it's not negotiable. You know, it's not what's left over. It's part of your list of bills every month. And if you do that, it will pay you dividends moving into the future. You know, it's funny, if we think about how much that 10% could be, for some people, like I said, it can seem a little, you know, really tough to do it. But if you break it down, you know, and really see what is it going to cost. You know, here's an example. If you're making $75,000 a year, okay, 10% is $625 a month, approximately. Okay, so $625 a month, $145 a week might be easier to think about. How about $20 a day? Okay, that's a lot easier to think about. And it's funny, you know, sometimes we'll spend $100 a week or more on pumpkin spice lattes or food delivery, but we can't save any money. So having that systematic plan, I think, is, super critical to any, first steps in, developing a retirement plan. And then you have to set your priorities, okay? Because maybe we can't achieve the results we want, that dream. So we have to really decide what's most important to us, and go from there. Maybe we have to delay retirement a couple years. Maybe we have to work part-time in retirement. But setting the priorities is important also to just decide what's most important to you.
So instead of spending $20 on lottery tickets, take that 20 and set it aside.
Probably a great idea to reallocate that $20 on lottery tickets. Hey, you might win, but chances are you probably won't. And we're all guilty of doing that.
Yeah, your hope is to break even there.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So saving money, prioritizing, which is what I was going to bring up, and you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
You've really got to set your priorities and think it through. And certainly if you're married, that's got to be a conversation between spouses to figure things out. And
Yes.
what do we want to do when we do retire, as you pointed out? What are our goals? Do we want to travel?
Yeah.
Do we want to get involved in philanthropic
That's right.
endeavors? So what are we going to do with our time when we do retire?
Yes.
Do you recommend, when you talk about that $20 a day, are we putting it in a savings account or are we investing in something with that money?
Well, that depends. I mean, that's a great question. I get that question all the time. And at the end of the day, it really depends on each individual. That's not a one-size-fits-all answer, because everybody's different. Everybody has a different everybody feels differently about investments, right? Some people are comfortable with it, some people aren't, and that's going to go into your decision-making process. I would never tell somebody who's not comfortable with investments to invest. Okay, it doesn't make sense. If if it's going to keep you up at night, it's not worth it. So it really comes down to what's right for each individual at the end of the day.
And is that where a financial advisor comes into play?
How
important is that piece of it?
Yeah, and that's one thing a financial advisor can help you with is mapping out identifying those things that you want to happen in retirement. Mapping out that, creating a strategy for retirement, and helping you, with some tools and strategies along the way. And sometimes it's really just a little quarter turn of the screwdriver, right? Those little changes along the way that can make all the difference in the world.
What's the best step to take if you're considering a financial planner, a financial advisor? Where do you go? How do you get started with that?
No, that's a great question. I always say it's always best to work with folks that you're comfortable working with. So a good first step would be to have an initial conversation, maybe talk to, several advisors and see who is going to be a good fit for you, because it has to be a good fit. If it's not a good fit, you're not going to get the work done. So that's my best advice, is make sure you're comfortable with whoever you're working with.
Now, why is it important to work with an advisor who is a fiduciary?
So that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. A fiduciary is somebody who is legally obligated to work in their client's best interests. Some advisors are, some advisors aren't. Obviously, I think it makes sense to have somebody that's obligated to work in your best interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you recommend sort of going through a process of talking to several advisors before you make a decision on where you're going to land?
It depends. I mean, if you're comfortable with somebody that's maybe been recommended to you, and you have that initial conversation and it feels good, there's no reason to, go farther. But if you're not sure, or you're not coming from somebody from a referral, I think it might make sense to talk to a few and just use your best judgment. And like I said, you got to be comfortable. That's the most important thing.
Why is it important to be aware of an advisor's specialty, the area where they have their strengths?
Yeah, great question. So it depends. It really depends on your needs and your concerns. Mm-hmm. So if you have an advisor, or you're looking at hiring an advisor that maybe specializes in group benefits for an employer, maybe it's insurance or retirement plans, but your concerns are more surrounded around retirement planning, or maybe planning around a special needs child, maybe that's not a great fit. I think it's important to make sure that the advisor has experience in the areas that you're going to need help with.
Now, what are some of the things that a fiduciary, an advisor, will bring to the table. Not just the retirement planning piece of it, but there are other elements to this whole retirement picture. What are some of those other things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot
I'm
of
full
times,
of great questions.
you are, Scott, you are. A lot of times people feel or have the impression that financial advisors only deal with investments, and
Right.
that's all they deal with.
Right.
Really, a financial advisor is going to help a client with any money matter at all, whether it's personal finances, investments, whatever the case might be. I have clients coming to me with questions that have very little or anything to do with stuff that I do directly, okay, but they have questions, and we can run analysis and we can give them some good advice, and at the end of the day, that's what we're there for, is to help our clients.
So that would be some financial planning. What about life insurance, long-term care?
Yeah.
Those are all elements of it.
It's all part of the planning process. Yeah. So insurance in general, right, are very often funding mechanisms for a plan, right? If it's life insurance, it's, God forbid, something happens to somebody, right, and they don't come home that day. It's to fund the plan, okay, for the family, right, moving into the future. If it's long-term care, it's to fund long-term care moving into the future. It may not be the only option for funding, but it's an option for funding. And for a lot of folks, it makes sense because what you're doing with insurance, be it long-term care, disability, life insurance, is you're offloading the risk from yourself to the insurance company. So the insurance companies have bigger shoulders, more financial might than any of us individually, so they can handle it.
So if I'm looking for someone to help me with my retirement planning, a financial advisor, one of the things that I would want to know is, what's this going to cost to me? How are advisors compensated?
Awesome question, and I know you have a lot of them. But yeah, no, financial advisors are compensated in a few different ways. Usually, generally speaking, they're compensated through either client fees, okay, or through commissions, okay, and/or actually. And it really comes down to what's best for the client, okay? So client fees can be either hourly, some advisors, just charge an hourly fee like an attorney. It could be through a fixed fee that, more project-based, or it could be through a percentage of assets under management. Commissions are usually payable through commissionable sales of insurance products, like we were talking about, or through buying and selling securities. Look, most firms don't take a one-size-fits-all approach. Okay, and I know at our firm, we take the approach where it depends on what's best for the client.
What are some of the more common mistakes that you've seen people make as they approach their retirement or start their retirement planning?
Yeah, a common mistake, especially when you're young, is not saving soon enough, right? We say, oh, we have all the time in the world, so I'm going to put it off. Start young. Like I said before, there's no better friend to compound interest, than time. So start it going as soon as you can, even if it's a little bit. That's one thing. Just keep the savings process going systematically and start it early. Another mistake people make is not having a plan. Not having a plan. A lot of times people just accumulate accounts over the years, and they're just doing stuff here and there and everywhere, but it's sporadic. But if you have a plan and there's a reason for everything, it can make a big difference as well.
Now, what are some of the things that people maybe can take advantage of now? And I'm thinking specifically of an investment where their employer matches.
That's a great question. Yeah, so that's another thing I see a lot with folks is, that you have a great retirement plan at work. Maybe your employer has a very generous match program. And what happens is, I'll talk with the client, hey, how much are you contributing to your plan? They'll maybe tell me 3%. How much is your match? 6%. And I ask them, why aren't you taking all of the match? And they're like, I never thought about it. It's free money, folks. Take their money. Yeah. They want you to have it, really. They wouldn't offer it if they didn't want you to have it. So I would say maximize the match programs at work. That's a common mistake that people miss a lot.
And that money comes out before it even gets to you, meaning you're not missing anything because it's...
That's correct. It doesn't even end up in your bank account. Okay, you see it as a transaction on your check stub.
What are some of the other considerations? For example, if I'm thinking about retiring at a certain age, 60, we'll just say 65 for a round number. Do I consider my life after that and how many years I hope to be around? Is
Yeah.
that something to be thinking about too?
No, that's a great question. And the answer is absolutely. Taking into account, expected life expectancy, your general finances, a lot, the lifestyle you want in retirement. These are all things that you have to consider when making a plan. Absolutely.
Now, what should people do about health care if they don't qualify for Medicare?
So Medicare starts at 65.
Yeah.
So if you're planning to retire before 65, that's a consideration, right? So you're going to be leaving your job, which means you're leaving your health insurance behind. And if that is your plan, it's just important to have an alternative. Maybe your spouse is continuing to work. You can, hop on their plan at work. Or, here in Massachusetts, there's a great option with the Massachusetts Health Connector. It might be more than Medicare, but that's okay. We just need to make it part of the plan.
And that's something that, with a financial advisor, you can work your way into?
Yeah, and that's one thing a financial advisor can help you with, is figuring out the costs involved and then working it into the plan and, plotting that trajectory for, achieving all those dreams you ever had.
Personal question. What prompted Mike Davis to get into this career field?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking that, actually. So I was in another business altogether for over 20 years. And I've been doing this now for 10 years. And it's one of those things where I wanted to do something, one, that I felt like I was helping people, and two, I felt like I was building something for my family and something I could be proud to bring my kids into if they so desired, right? But this is that kind of business. So for me, being an advisor, I love what I do. I'm helping people every day, okay? And I truly believe that in my soul. And I have lots of clients that, refer me to other clients because they feel like, we've helped. But that's why I got into it, because I could, it's almost giving back to the people, in the community. It's having a community business and having something that you can be proud of that, hey, if my kids want to get into it, I'd love to have them come into the business.
Now, is something that you would do as a financial advisor if we had an initial meeting and there wasn't a fit between the two of us? Would you recommend someone else? Would you send me to someone that would be a good fit?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if it was obvious that that we weren't a good match to work together, either I felt that way or I got the impression that you felt that way, I'd be happy to make a recommendation. I have a lot of advisors that I have relationships with, that I would be happy to recommend and be confident that they would do a good job.
Now, if people begin this process, how do they get started? Where do they go and where do they find information?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of great resources out there. First thing is, see if anybody are happy with who they're working with. If they are working with anybody, that's a good first step. Having a plan, putting that together. And then, feel free to check out my website. There's lots of great tools on my website. We have resources with links to Social Security and Medicare to get good information there. Great, useful links there. We have some financial calculators. There's also an interactive financial roadmap that you can look and say, hey, am I, it's just a high level view, but hey, do I have a good first start there? And then, just starting on my website, and you can find that at www.brightfuturefinancialllc.com.
And if I'm thinking about taking the next step, I shouldn't feel embarrassed about not knowing what I don't know.
No.
In other words, don't be afraid to ask questions, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. At the end of the day, I do this every day. Okay, there's going to be things that I see and I'm familiar with that if you're not, in the financial industry, you're just not going to know. I have very smart people coming into my office all the time, and we talk about that, and they're embarrassed about it. I'm like, look, I wouldn't know thing one about what you do for a living, so don't feel bad. This is what we do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's almost like a different language when you go into something like this.
That's great.
And that's why the relationship with the advisor is so important, because there has to be a lot of trust and faith there too.
You got to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You got to be able to trust. And I tell that to my clients up front. If you don't feel comfortable sharing information with me, it's not going to work. It has to be 100% both ways.
Now, once you make that commitment, I'm a client of yours. Once we make that commitment, how often would you tell people to get together with their advisor to refresh memories and to take a look at things again and again?
That's a great question. So, most clients, I say we have to get together at least annually,
Yeah.
okay, just to check in, make sure everything's working properly. Sometimes we do it more often, depending on the complexity of the plan, but at least annually. You know what? Things change, right? Things change in your life, things change in the economy, in the world. Different products and services come out. So, we always want to make sure we're doing the best for our clients and that they're using the best tools that are going to be most tax efficient and, get the best result.
And of course, health is a big part of the planning, and health changes.
Health does, yeah.
And that can complicate things, and you need to be able to have that conversation if you do have a health concern too.
Health concerns, family changes,
Yeah.
dynamics, all of that. Unfortunately, divorce, all of the above. These are things that would cause things to change. Even if you don't feel like something's changed, very often I'll sit down with somebody and we'll identify something that changed. And they would have said, no, nothing's changed, Mike, it's all good. But, things change. We don't even realize it.
Once again, the website that people can go to for information?
Yes, it's www.brightfuturefinancialllc.com. And one thing I should say too, I am a financial advisor. I'm associated with Eagle Strategies, so I'm a financial advisor for Eagle Strategies LLC. Bright Future Financial, my company, is not associated or owned by, not owned or operated by Eagle Strategies.
Mike Davis, it's been great talking to you, both in front of the camera and when we talk off camera. I kind of enjoy those conversations too.
Well, thank you, Scott.
It's great
been
having you with us.
fantastic for me too. Thank you so much.